Don't everybody speak at once.
Hi, everyone.
Kimberly, this is your show. I'm just here to watch. So
Amazing.
Yeah.
Are we ready to kick it off then?
Let's do it.
Cool, let's do it. Well, thank you everyone for joining our coffee chat this morning. I am Kimberly Hoffman. I am the Director of Marketing Events at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and I am a former MPI Indiana past president. These coffee chats started during the pandemic and are meant to be super interactive. So what we're hoping to do is continue to build community through some of the challenges we're facing, some of the solutions that we can borrow from each other and implement to continue to elevate our industry and what it is that we do. So I'm going to chat for a little bit here at the beginning with some updates and kind of thoughts and feedback, and then want to share experiences, do some problem solving together. So just as we're going through this first part, please do feel free to kind of reflect on your own experiences if you haven't already, because there will be some questions and hopefully some good participation, because I know this is a topic that is really affecting all of us in our day-to-day more than we might acknowledge. So first, I just want to call a couple of sources and inspiration for what we're talking about this morning. First, at the IEDC, we do have a data team, so they're pulling numbers constantly for us. So as it relates to the state and what's going on with our workforce here, I've got some good just quick stats to share that will put some things into perspective. We also have a report from a partner called Insperity that we met at an event recently that calls out a lot of really good data that their team has pulled together. And then Mr. Longo has shared an article on LinkedIn from CoStar featuring Bob Habib, who's the CEO of Maverick Hotels and Restaurants. It was a great article and really aligned with a lot of the remarks that we'd already put together. So very excited to be able to bring that in, and would encourage you to creep on Andy's LinkedIn and find that article if you have not already read it. So first, talking about Indiana numbers and trends. So disclaimer, I am speaking as Kimberly, the meeting professional. This discussion does not reflect the views of the IEDC or the state of Indiana. But our labor force in the state, thank you, Andy, the labor force in the state is at 63.4% participation, which means that 63.4% of people in the state of Indiana that can be working are working. That includes the entire population. So the US rate is 62.3%. So as a state, we are slightly higher than the national average of participation in the workforce. The total labor force in Indiana, just for reference, that includes both Hoosiers that are employed and those who are seeking employment. We have about 3.4 million in the state that are accounted for in that statistic. As of the end of September, Indiana's unemployment rate is 2.5%. The US rate is 3.5%. So people are working at pre-COVID engagement levels. They're making other choices. We are in a buyer's market. If you want to compare this to real estate, people are taking their time. People are vetting out the right options for them, and they are ultimately working at the levels that we were seeing previously. So it's not a matter of people not wanting to work. It's not a matter of people collecting unemployment at rates that are higher than what their jobs might pay. It is strictly the opportunities are there, the choices are there. What can we do to be a little bit more compelling? A fun Indiana fact, we've had a record-breaking year for investments that are coming into the state, expansions within the state. We have had businesses commit to investing $21 billion in their Indiana operations in the coming years, just in this year alone. So that's more than double what we attracted last year, and that's a pretty big deal, because these commitments bring our average wage per hour as a state up to $33.88 per hour projected. That is 25.9% higher than the current average wage in the state. So we are trending along with what you're seeing nationally and in many circumstances where that competition in rate is going to continue to increase. The availability of jobs at higher salaries are going to exist. So just something to keep in consideration. The quality of jobs are only going to get better. So we have an uphill battle to keep talent in the hospitality industry, especially locally. So those are just some Indiana things happening right now. Just as we're talking about, okay, we know that people are working. We know that the talent exists. How are we providing our opportunities in a compelling way? So company culture and thoughtful HR are kind of the keys that are jumping out as what makes an attraction and retention effort successful right now. So I know pay is the first thing that we're going to hear about often. Are you compensating fairly in today's market? Not compensating fairly or higher than what you used to pay, but in today's market. Are you communicating well during your HR, your onboarding, your leadership, just across the organization? How is communication? Are your mission, vision, and values clear? Do you live by them? And do you interact with people in that mindset? It's one thing to have your mission, vision, and values painted and plastered on the wall in your office, but what are you doing to actually bring them to life within your organization, not just for your clients, not just for your customers, but for your team? Some stats on why people quit jobs in 2021. Pay was too low. No opportunity for advancement. Felt disrespected at work. These were the top 3 that showed up in some of the reports that we were looking at, and it's pretty consistent with what you might expect at this point. It's hard because we know that a lot of the jobs in our industry aren't necessarily advancement ready, or we need people to fill the jobs that aren't necessarily the more advanced and managerial and executive level roles. So that is something for us to keep in mind as we continue through the conversation. I saw John call out benefits. That's huge. Well-being benefits, exercise, mental health related, nutrition related, even starting to see like a paid hour of your 40-hour work week can be used for therapy. Cool. That makes you perform maybe at a better, higher mental capacity. It makes you feel seen, heard, like your needs are being taken care of all around. So that was an interesting thought that we saw, and that can help offset not only your healthcare costs, but a limited compensation package, because we all know that we hear people want more money, but that's not necessarily always feasible. So just other considerations in that world. Technology and remote work at similar pay rates, that is proving to be a challenge. So why and how are we compelling our employees to come in on a day-to-day basis when they can serve in a customer service role or in a fully remote role where they can save on commuting expenses, that time it takes to commute, and just that extra stuff that they don't have to do when they're sitting at home in front of a laptop. So what can you offer to then kind of outweigh that extra commitment from team members? Last thing on this report was just recognition. 80% of people say that recognition makes them work harder and is a top motivator for job satisfaction. So thinking beyond like anniversaries and birthdays, internal rewards, feedback, mentorship. Sometimes one of the best rewards that we can give people is just our time and attention. And the higher up the ladder you climb, the harder it is to sit down and really focus that availability of yourself as a resource. But that is a benefit. That is a bonus to the people on your team. So aside from a good onboarding experience, aside from a quick meeting when a new team member joins and a quick getting to know you fashion, like what are we doing to spend time with the people that we're bringing on board 6 months in, a year in, 2 years in, to continually help them advance, giving them the resources, the knowledge that we have, and then also just empowering them to feel like they're growing and having that closer relationship with you. And then external rewards, bonuses, things, perks, surprise and delight, all the things that we do really well in the industry in terms of thinking about people. Peer recognition is something that if we're not already implementing, that's a good route to go. It just establishes that culture of acknowledging the successes within the teams, and then certainly leadership recognition from top down. So moving on, some general feedback and solutions. Just again, workforce in general, and then we'll kind of get into more hospitality specific and some more of our individual situations that we've come across. But more important than ever, and this is something that I think this chapter, this industry, this community does super well, is our involvement at the university level. Cannot sing the praises highly enough of Erica Schonkweiler, Katie Riggs, Emily Perkins, those that are teaching in our universities, connecting the ecosystem of talent that we have with the potential career paths and leaders that they might need to have in their network. So I think we're already in a really great place for this. But what are we doing to engage with the K through 12? I know that that sounds wild, but the reality is that is a future piece of our workforce that comes up more quickly than we can expect. So even if it's just exposure to our industry, having kids in for field trips, tours, explaining the kinds of jobs that we have available within the industry at a young age versus their exposure to tourism and travel and hospitality and events and meetings being what they're experiencing firsthand, but not really connecting those dots, if that makes sense. So again, hard to carve out that time, but more critical than ever that we are essentially advocating and selling for our industry as young as those K through 12 potential employees. Another interesting concept that I'm sure many may have already dipped into a little bit would be the boomerang employee. So people that worked for you pre-COVID, how can we get those people that know your ins and outs, know your culture, back into that system? That culture fit, that personality fit is not teachable at the end of the day. The skills are something that we can refine and work through. So if someone has left your organization, it's likely they might want to come back at a more senior position or at a higher pay rate, which could be worth the guarantee of that saved time, saved investment on training, because you know that they're that fit and that they understand the bones and the embodiment of your organization. I think one thing to consider if we are looking at that boomerang employee is being vulnerable when you're reaching out to these team members, acknowledging past circumstances, listening to their feedback, and addressing what it is that you're doing to implement the change in a way that will stick. Let them be a part of how things will be moving forward in order to make sure that you're able to find good footing with that employee again. So those were my general notes. Getting into hospitality specific. So my last little bit of spieling, and then we'll get into some of our own challenges and discussions. For our industry, in order to take this information that we have and come out on the other side, to fill these jobs that we all feel when we go into venues, hotels, restaurants, into the service space, empathy is the answer, 100%. By putting the same hospitality effort that we put forth for our clients, our customers, our CEOs that we're planning for, we have to put that same mentality into our teams in order for everybody to win. So pre-COVID, the norm was grinding people for very little money, for long hours. And we've seen what it's like now to slow down, to learn how to set boundaries, to evaluate our choices. Social media is both a great thing and a bad thing. I think there's been a lot more open discussion about mental health and the state of what it's like to work in our industry. And I think people are starting to challenge, is that what I want to go back to now that I've kind of had time to reevaluate? So how things were can't necessarily be how they are moving forward. This takes a lot of hard self-awareness and introspection and being willing to have tough conversations. But as you're asking people to fill these roles and to commit to these types of schedules and things, if these are things that we ourselves wouldn't do in those same circumstances, then we need to make a shift. I recently was judging awards for an organization, and there was a question about sustainability and, you know, how your event was the most sustainable it could be in this category. And a response that I read that really has stuck with me is they got into people as a resource within their sustainability practices. And I've not seen that before. But they talked about limiting shifts to 10 hours at most, ensuring that meals were taken with some actual tracking, not just, yeah, Billy's going to go on a break, and when he gets back, Tammy's going to take her turn, but actual tracking and ensuring that people are taken care of, ensuring that between shifts, people are getting enough sleep or opportunity to go home and decompress. So just, it was some interesting context, and something I would challenge us to think about moving forward is, what are we asking of people, and is that sustainable on their bodies and their mental state? Asterisk to that is that some jobs and some industries, like the longer days, are preferred. People would rather work long chunks, get it done, and move on. So I think the key is just ask people what they want versus going with what's always been done because it's worked for the business. Okay, so that was enough of me talking. We are going to get into some of the challenges that as planners and partners at events we're facing as we start to see our pickup come back to those pre-pandemic levels. So first, like, where are we noticing shortages and changes in service in our industry? And what have we done to work on that and solve for that?
I'll go. Yeah. Kimberly, thanks for the really thoughtful remarks and just the articles around what's going on right now. But I think what is interesting to me is I see it everywhere. It's not just you know, in the restaurant. I mean, you see it when you go in, there's only one server. This one, you know, where was I the other day? The server called off, so they couldn't, you know, this was at the grocery store. So when I go into the grocery store and people are working and they're young people working, I'm not trying to stereotype who's working and who's not. I thank the gal who I know is a high school student for coming to work. I think we see it everywhere. I mean, I know we see it in restaurants. I know it's hard for the hotels to react. I know that, I don't know if anybody from White Lodging is on, but they've been very strategic about how they are moving employees, which I think that is a part of the solution. Is if you are a conglomerate like a White Lodging or Sun Hotels or whatever you are, you have to be much more strategic about your employees and your managers. So I'll just share what White Lodging is doing. Is they are, because they manage, you know, now the Marriott, the JW, and the 3-pack, their management team works throughout all of the 5 properties. So they can better shift around employees between the properties, whether it's housekeeping or restaurant or banquets. And I think that's been very, very successful for them. I stayed downtown last week during FFA, so a really good example of, you know, a small city converging into literally the region, not just downtown. And, you know, trying to make sure that the kids could be fed. And so we had to add food trucks, and we had to, you know, we just had to manage around that. So I'll shut up, but I think it's every industry. And I think we need to, all of us as in this community, need to be grateful and thankful for whatever restaurant we're going to or hotel, and just remember that people don't have to work in this industry anymore. And I think that's a part of it. And just one other note, when you talked about getting into, we are working to try to get into high school, because I think that hospitality needs to take the same approach that STEM did. It's a really big nut. It's not going to be easy. We've been trying to work with Employee Indy. Hospitality isn't even on their, you know, their chart of careers. I think Westfield high schools are the only high school program, I think they are, that have classes in hospitality. So somehow making sure that those students, whether starting in elementary, school, don't think we just plan birthday parties, as Kathleen shared in the chat, but that it's a means to a career. If you start in a restaurant, you can be this. I started working in a restaurant, but I had no idea that the path would lead this, because there wasn't this path. So that's my thoughts for today.
Yeah, Susie, thanks for sharing that. I think the education piece is really important, but it's also, I think we need to make sure that we're highlighting that it's not just culinary, because I think a lot of folks see culinary as a route, but hospitality is so much more than that, right? And so yeah, getting into those schools earlier and talking about other opportunities is going to be really important. And I think, we have a few open positions at Visit Indy right now across some different functional areas. And one of the conversations we're having internally is, the challenge of recruiting and retaining sort of for-profit talent in a not-for-profit environment. And that's not unique to us, right? I mean, it's many people have similar challenges, but I think the shift of power balance during the pandemic to employees has kind of exacerbated what we're looking at. And expectations of employees coming into the workforce, looking to move within the workforce now are not aligned with our sort of expectations of what people might be looking for. And so we're having to really rethink some things.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Any other comments on where you're noticing challenges?
Kimberly, to kind of piggyback off of what John and Susie said, I don't know if you remember, and Susie, maybe you remember, this was probably, maybe a decade or so ago or a little longer. The Marriott used to have a program internally where youth could enter into that program. They went through classes, and once they completed that, they would actually be able to, get a job with the Marriott. And I just remember that distinctly, because at that point I wasn't heavily into events. So it's probably been about 15 years. And these were foster youth who were independent, being emancipated. And I was able to get them in that program. And I don't think that it exists anymore, but just the concept of that, because not only do you want to get high schoolers, you also want to get individuals who may not have gone the traditional route, but yet they need something that they need to do. And, maybe community college might not necessarily be the route for them. A lot of them will, think about the culinary, but, the hospitality piece, I think that that's an area as well where hotels can partner up with larger entities, not just workforce development, but other entities that are working with young people who are needing jobs. But the one thing that I'm hearing from companies is that the newer generation of people who are applying for jobs, someone told me they will apply, they'll accept the offer, and then they ghost us. We have not heard from them. That's what I've been hearing. And then I had someone who just was hired at a job, and she said, one of the perks that I got, and it's a remote job, is that we have unlimited PTO time. I'm like, really? Is this a new thing now? I mean, I'm like, okay, is this what we're doing now? And maybe this is the new trend. I don't know, but it's very hard, because people are no longer coming to companies or agencies saying, here's what I have, here's what I bring. It's quite the opposite. What can you provide for me?
Yes, it goes back to that buyer's market. And Jeanette, I'm glad you brought up the point about sometimes when that offer is extended, the candidate accepts.
Yes.
That time that passes between the acceptance and the start date is so critical. And I've even seen our HR team here really doing everything they can to combat that exact issue, because it is very real. Even once the job is accepted, there is nothing legally binding that says you're in. So people are continuing to interview, people are continuing to weigh their options. And if something better comes along, if a better fit is in front of them, it is possible that you will be out that time if that candidate were to go another direction. So just some strategies I'll share that we've implemented here to help prevent that is essentially a roundup of different phone calls and things. So like I had a new hire recently. I called her and walked her through exactly what I expected our first week to be. I asked, about any, thoughts that she had had since our interview or further questions I could ask. HR called and followed up with more just know before you go information and making sure she was super comfortable with where to park and how to enter and what to wear and just like the little things that make them feel as if you're really, focused on their hire and that they are going to be a meaningful part of your organization. We also do, like the first day emails where it's like, this person is starting today. Here's a bunch of things about them, but the hires are involved in that process and people like to talk about themselves generally. So it's easy to kind of extract that information from them and prepare a really meaningful rollout of their role during that 4-week wait, if you will, or 2-week wait, however long that time frame goes. So definitely not something to leave unturned if it's not something your organization's already implementing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just hired 2 new contractors and they're in training right now. And so right before I hopped on this call, I sent an email to say, hey, how's it going? What are you guys doing? Because I don't want to be untouchable to them. And I think a lot of times people feel like, whoever is the head of it, they may be untouchable, like there's layers to it. Yes, I have a supervisor, a program manager, but I'm accessible to them at any point and continue to say, that piece to them and just being in contact. But I think you're right. Once the hiring has happened, it's like, how are you good? How are you doing? Any questions, and just staying in contact and feeling like I'm invested in you, feeling like you're valued and that you'll be successful in your position.
Yeah. We've got some good conversation happening in the chat around unlimited PTO. So I'm wondering if we should open this up to a larger discussion. I don't know how many on the call are involved in influencing the various benefits that your teams might offer, but would love to kind of go further on that conversation. What's working around that? What's not? Is anyone on the fence about implementing it? Has anyone had it and then taken it away? Let's dig in there a little bit.
We have we have set time at the fraternity, and but we also have a very generous work from home policy during the week, all coming post the COVID, and people are, still don't know after a year when people come in. It's either a ghost town or, in fact, we're looking at maybe selling the building and doing something different, like a lot of companies are talking about. But what I've noticed is kind of an overall attitude shift toward work. What is the work day? I will do emails if I get up at 6 or 7, and then some people have evening, and it's really more of I think what people are looking for is more of a fluid day. I get my time in or my work done, but it doesn't fit the 8 to 5 mentality. Because I want to go to Orange Theory at 2 in the afternoon, or I'm going to go running at 9:30 in the morning when it's comfortable. So I think I see more of that creeping in. And then what's interesting is I also notice, depending on your generational preference, and I'm leery to say age because I think it's your mindset, but it creates stress in some people. And other people are like, well, this is great. But I also think we're just missing sing people as well. Michael Dominguez mentioned at GLES last year. And by the way, I hope you're all registered for GLES coming up next week. But Michael, is his name Dominguez, Jamie? Dominguez. He mentioned that that people who are younger and that don't have that work experience of an office environment, they miss those opportunities for mentoring around the water cooler moments. I see that. We hire a lot of young folks at the fraternity, and they're immediately told you can be 100% remote 5 days a week. So they miss that. And I don't want to make more out of that than there is, but I think there's something to it, that they don't have that mentoring or the people to talk to, even their peers, because they do their own thing. I think we're really missing out on those opportunities.
What about any non-traditional benefits that your team might be offering? Can we talk about what shifts we've made recently?
Susie or John, I don't know if one of you want to speak to some of the updated benefits that Visit Indy just rolled out about some of the extended, what is it, like short-term medical leave? Because I thought those were really valuable.
Okay, so there was my question in the chat, but I'd be interested what others companies are doing, for profit or non-for-profit, but we did just roll out a new benefit platform about FMLA basically, and about how we do our short-term disability that is valuable for all. And to Andy's point earlier, we have young and we have old at our organization, okay? And while we have many young, some of our younger group who are right now in they're having babies and having children. So it's not a maternity policy. It's a disability policy that, do you call it disability, but it is long-term disability, where whatever you're going through, let's say you have a health diagnosis, you get a certain amount of days that are paid that you don't, and then you can, anybody is eligible for this, and I'm really botching this, but anybody is eligible for this time off. Kathleen, you probably know more about that too, but
No, well, and I think too, just like that, it's not just for having a baby. I think
Right.
that was the big thing for me,
That's
is
the
that
big
like
thing.
it could be used for helping a parent move into a facility. It could be used so multiple different ways that aren't just like, man, I'm past childbearing, so I guess that's not really a benefit to me
Right.
anymore. So just kind of that, like, hey, there's a lot of ways that those additional, I forget how many weeks, but it's generous.
It's generous. It's up to 8 weeks.
Yeah. To help,
to-
with those approved circumstances, but lots of life circumstances that are included in that time beyond just parental leave.
And we also have parental leave for maternity and paternity, which is
Yeah.
nice.
And along the same thread there, so maternal and paternal leave for baby adoption, whatever it might be, opening up those circumstances. I've seen an uptick in desire for fertility benefits being a very big draw for people. I think we're also seeing like childcare being something that people are super interested in just assistance with. I think as jobs get more flexible with remote hours, remote work, people are inevitably cutting back on childcare to kind of double up on, that savings. So they might be working from home while their kids are at home as well, and taking less childcare support essentially. So just supporting employees in a way that allows them to continue to be productive for you, but then also afford the childcare costs, which are also rising. Yeah. Also saw some, let's see, a recreation center, on-site clinic, all great things. Providing gas cards to employees required to be on site. That's interesting, Sarah. That's really good. Cool. So we can continue on the benefits discussion or get into kind of some problem solving that we've done. Is there a quick consensus on where we want to keep steering the conversation?
Yeah, I think the benefits conversation could be its own different webinar and take up a large part of the day if we decided to do that. So maybe we could focus on some problem solving stuff.
Cool. So in some of our pre-coffee chat promotions and polling, responsiveness and turnaround for sales team members and just sales teams being, very spread thin was something that came up. So wanted to address that and see if there are some creative solutions that we can offer. I think one thing is just putting all of our work in on the front end as best we can as planners and partners to our hoteliers. So as hard as it is to slow down, give your RFP as much attention and effort as you can on the front end to eliminate as much back and forth as possible and to not drain the bandwidth of your partners. This is especially important with short lead times. If we can, as planners, advocate for ourselves and stand up and get a little bit louder internally to make sure that we get the information that we need, our partners will only be that much more successful. So I think it's time for our voices to get a little louder and to be, more comfortable pushing back to people that give us half of the information, because we all know that that's how it goes. We take what we get, we take it to our partners and say, I don't know, this is what I have right now. I'll get you the rest as soon as I can. It's like, nope, we need more information up front internally. The expectation of the industry now is shifted, and we need to set our friends up for success. And John says, yes, please don't ask for a 24-hour turnaround when there's no next steps in the next 3 months. That is so valid. It's up to us to be discretionary, to be able to decide when to cry wolf, and be careful about not putting that kind of pressure on our friends over and over. Because the other reality is, as things get busier, they might not have to answer your panicked email at the end of the day. Those boundaries might be in place. So it's just something to consider in how you interact as a planner or partner with those in your world. Another one that was just cool that came up. So housekeeping, there are fewer people willing to work the long hours required. And so those schedules have been a little shifted from what it has been in the past. Attendees are coming back to their rooms at 5 p.m., not being able to get into their rooms because housekeeping is still going. And we hate to see that for our friends that are providing those services. So a couple of ideas in negotiating on the front end to help alleviate the labor issues around housekeeping. You can go green, and as a part of your negotiations, forego your housekeeping services during the time that you are at your properties, especially if it's like a 2 or 3 day conference. Can we, agree as an organization that that's just not something we need to implement? Another solution that I actually experienced while I was traveling recently was upon check-in, they asked, hey, are you willing to forego housekeeping for the duration of your stay? If so, we'll offer a $10 food and beverage credit to any of our outlets that are already up and staffed and working that you can then apply to your final folio. So working within the means and the resources that you do have, prepackaged things, well-staffed outlets, kind of shifting some of that focus around and being able to offer that nominal $10 credit per night. I mean, I definitely spent more on my food and beverage than I would have had that credit not been there. I spent far beyond the $10 a night, but the hotel benefited both from a revenue perspective, and then I benefited from, the food. Any other creative things that you've done? Anything you've done to anticipate issues on the planning front or on the front end that you feel has set your team up for success or your employees?
I just want to chime in on the foregoing room service, the Omni downtown, and I think it's an Omni worldwide, statewide, whatever, that they give back, and I'm totally botching it. So Susie, you may know that, but if you forego it, they donate food, right, to those in need. So many credits. I think I just deleted the picture. I was trying to look it up to see if I could tell you guys, but it's a service that I thought it was for the conference itself, but it was for just Omni itself. I don't know if anybody knows that one, but going into that sustainability piece of it too, and helping the community and give back in that way too, which is kind of cool. And I know that's more Omni top down, but I think with the conversations that planners can have with their partners to get creative in doing something may help the thought and the mentality of those attendees that are coming in who want to give back in different ways like that. Just that.
Yeah. Emily, would you care to elaborate a little bit on your last note? Just being transparent with your attendees. Can you talk about how you've done that in the past, or things that you've thought about that might be helpful for us when we're all communicating with our attendees?
I think specifically we looked at, and this started, back in 2020 when we were back meeting in person, was really being clear about what outlets were open, what hours were at the hotels. If we knew there wasn't going to be housekeeping, just saying that. I think we were pretty plain in our language. Even, we know you're short-staffed where you're coming from. You're going to expect to see the same thing when you're on site at the property. Here's the steps that they're taking, or whatever that looked like. I think we're doing the same even when it comes to fees. Food and beverage has gone up everywhere. So your registration costs more. Okay, are you paying more at the grocery for your groceries? Well, then you're going to pay more at the conference as well, because their prices have gone up the same. So I think whereas before sometimes we don't really don't look behind the curtain. We're just clear on what those fees are and what they can expect.
I feel like this sort of conversation started with the initial conversation about dietary accommodations. Right before it was like, don't tell people what we're going to be serving, because then there's going to be all this feedback before the conference even starts. Whereas now it's like, give them their menus, give them the opportunity, put the choice back into their court. And kind of the same thing now. It's like, okay, we're not going to worry about the feedback. We're going to prepare people to have the best experience for themselves.
John, you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I think to Emily's point, I don't know if you guys are all familiar with Jay Bear. He's a marketing speaker in the hospitality industry and other industries, and he's done some research recently. And I'm sure he's not alone, but customer expectations for service are now back to, or even more enhanced than they were prior to the pandemic. I mean, people expect fast responses and better service, and I'm not quite sure where that's coming from, because our daily reality is that we're not back to pre-pandemic levels of service and execution. And so, Emily, I think your point about really speaking very plainly to your folks about what they're going to expect and setting it up in the best framework. So, like you said, we're all still short-staffed. You understand, there may be a small line at check-in. You may wait 5 minutes for your coffee. Know that housekeeping is optional. Those kind of things are really helpful, because framing those interactions with the service staff in a hotel or a restaurant or wherever it is in the community is so important. And people's experiences, what's the saying? I don't remember what you tell me, but I remember how you made me feel, right? And so if they can come into the city or some part of the city knowing that I'm just gonna have to have a little bit of grace, in whatever situation that is, that's a wonderful thing. Not that everybody reads it or heeds it, but if the majority do, or even just a good portion of it do, that's just going to help the overall situation. And I'm not sure that any of us really has a crystal ball that says when we're going to get back to, truly pre-pandemic staffing levels and delivering, meeting service expectations in that way, but it's not tomorrow.
We are coming up on the end of our time, so just want to call that out and see if anyone's got some final thoughts to share.
I just want to mention, I don't know if anyone has mentioned anything about, when you receive great service, tip well. I think that is crucial, so important. And, with restaurants, whether it be hotel, room attendants, just tip, appreciate great service. I see that less and less, in our industry. And I think that when you, tip, the employees well, it goes a long way, and it gives your organization a good opportunity to make a great impression, on the city. So just remember that, don't go to a restaurant and tip 10%. These folks work hard. If you get great service, make it show.
I would also add to that something I always try to do is like we just came off of an event for a client at the Grand Hyatt Washington last week. And if they have staffing level issues, you would never know it. We were a complete buyout of 3 floors of meeting space with over 2,000 attendees. And not a single person came to me with any complaints about hotel staff, cleaning issues, food service. It was amazing. Everything from the security to the person greeting people at the front door. Now granted, we had 2,000 attendees in the hotel, so I get that we were a big fish. And they were paying close attention, but I specifically called out every employee that I engaged with. I asked for business cards. And then I wrote a letter to the general manager because I know that in a lot of hotels, they'll do stand-up meetings, department meetings, whatever it is. And then they get kudos points or they get things they can use towards rewards. I know all the hotels have different programs, but I specifically typed a letter to the general manager calling out every single person by name, department, and what they did to make sure that our event was a success. And it literally, like, from the security person to the woman at the front door. And I think that that goes a long way. This isn't a very thankless industry a lot of times, especially for those that are on the true boots on the ground operational side of things. As someone who spent years in the restaurant and catering industry before I was in meetings and events, and sometimes just being appreciated for the hard work that they're doing, even if they're not quite where they want to be level wise, or maybe they don't quite get the benefits they want, that can go a really long way. And so I just think we have to, especially those on the meeting side that are consuming these services, we have to think about that and how far it goes. Complete Visit Indy survey, complete the Marriott survey. Talk to them before you give like bad feedback on a survey that they know that they get, ranked, globally by Marriott or whatever on. And so share that feedback and then complete the survey they're asking you to do. It's a simple thing that we can do, I think, to just say thank you, call out specific employees. And I think it goes a long way.
Amen. Do those surveys. If I could, I just want to give a quick plug to Visit Indy. Like I said, we are looking for several staff across some different areas. I'm specifically looking for a couple of salespeople. And I think Susie and our friends in Destination Experience might have an open position as well. So, please go visit our website, take a look at the career opportunities, and if you have people that you think might be a good fit for us, send them our way. We're a good group, and has been shared in the chat. We've definitely been recognized as a great place to work in the state of Indiana. So help us out, please. We need your help and your network bandwidth.
Awesome. Well, yeah, want to call out one last time. Congratulations to both Visit Indy and RGI for your impressive Best Places to Work in Indiana achievements. And just want to say thank you all for joining this morning and for continuing to advocate for our industry, to advocate for the people that are on the ground that might not have a voice in a conversation like this. So all you do is seen and noted and appreciated, and we'll just continue to try to make the world a better place one day at a time. Awesome. We will wrap up for today. Hope to see you all again next time. I don't know, team members, do we want to plug the next event or GLES? Make sure we're registering if we haven't already. Anything else?
100%. Or if you're already registered to go and you want to sign up for the Grapes and Grains tour that's happening on Saturday, it's going to be a really, really great event. So great attendance, great ratios for those suppliers that are looking for members and things like that. So yeah, still registration is still open.
Can't wait.
And from a recruitment standpoint, those of you who aren't members, we would love for you to join the MPI membership. Let us know. Feel free to reach out to me. I can give you more information, or actually more so Ashley Harker. And we will keep you posted on the next coffee chat, because these are not going away. They are just changed in a different format, if you will, as you guys have probably noticed. We're going to a quarterly focus. And I believe the board and Kimberly and I will inform what the next topic and timeframe will be, but we're thinking around January, I believe. So we look forward to seeing you all in person, and go let us know if you guys want to get on a leadership development. Is Carrie still here? Nope, she's gone. If there's anything you would like to jump on to help give back to our chapter, let us know that as well. Thank you, Kimberly. Great job, everyone. It's great
Kimberly.
to see you all.
Thank you.